Are you ready to get back into another amazing episode? I hope you guys are excited. I'm excited. Hopefully this mic is not too loud to you guys. I'm going to crank it down just a little bit. But anyways, guys, I'm super excited. I'm glad you guys are back. Listen, it has been a wild past couple of weeks, but we're getting back in the groove of things. I will say this just up front and honest with you guys. I had intended... What's going on, Racy? What's going on, Spartacus? I will say this. We were going to stream Wednesday and Friday this week, but I had a family emergency pop up, and now I'm going to be out of town on Thursday and Friday, be leaving my house on Wednesday. So, unfortunately, stream's going to get messed up again this week, but next week we should be back to normal. I do have a few other crazy things going on the following week, so we'll work through it. This is the craziness of being a full-time worker as well as a father and everything else. But I don't want to bore you with all the details. Just want to give you kind of the rundown and lowdown on what's going on. Let's get into politics. That's why you're here. Let's talk about politics. So first and foremost, we obviously had the Charlie Kirk incident. That took place last week. That is why I took off Wednesday. It was right around that incident, and I was like, man, I just don't know. It hit me in the gut. And we'll talk about this a little bit before we get into the stories. So the thing about the Charlie Kirk incident that really got me shook up was it was such a visceral thing to see in front of me. I watched it while I was at work. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. So I took the day off. I said, let's chill. Come Friday, we saw where the right was absolutely losing their minds, and they were going after everybody and anybody. And I said, listen, we can have this conversation, but we can't have this conversation right now. I said, because, and I put out a video, and I don't think very many people saw it, but that was my reaction. Yo, Jacob, appreciate you for the follow. I put out a video about this because I really wanted to try to get people to understand there will be a time for us to have a conversation, and right now is a good time. There will be a time for us to have a debate on about who is what, right? Whether he was this good or this bad. Right now, the right is so emotional that they're not able to really compartmentalize and understand that the arguments and where the arguments, so people start talking past each other when emotions are high. And so one of the things that I started doing, by the way, I guess I'm sick, so there's that. Gee. So if you hear me coughing, that's why. So anyways, what was happening, I noticed in these conversations I was having on TikTok was the right was angry, rah, and just screaming. But there was one commonality that they had. They'll start with the agreement that this should not happen, right? That's how it starts, is it should not happen. And then the right will say, yeah, because he was a good man, because he had great ideas. And then that's when the left goes, hey, but wait a minute. I don't know if I would completely agree with his ideas. Now, you see what's happening here. We started off with an agreement baseline. And then all of a sudden, this conversation got twisted, turned, and moved. And then, just like we've seen with the zero-sum game that we've seen in our political space for a while, is then that debate then gets exposed out to being, or expanded out to mean that somehow the left is celebrating this. Now, let's be very clear and draw lines where lines need to be drawn. There is a small segment, a very, very small segment, that is explicitly celebrating what happened to Charlie Kirk. That is wrong. We have seen where the right is going out and they are saying we need civil war. That is wrong as well. And that's something that we've got to keep in mind is as we're having these conversations, we have to try and parse through this. Just because someone's debating you on a particular point does not mean that they support wholeheartedly everything that has to do with that. For example, we just saw, and we'll get to this as well, where Venezuela, or Donald Trump, struck another Venezuelan boat, a second boat in the Gulf. Or, well, not in the Gulf, frankly. It's right off the coast of Venezuela. Now, I could be against striking boats in international waters from an offensive posture and still not side with the cartel. You see, you have to understand that these arguments can be broken down. For example, I could be in support of Abrego Garcia's due process rights and not support whatever crime he may or may not have been committed of. But during these emotional times, people can't have rational conversations. We throw everything out with the sand. Too much gain? I'll turn it down a little bit. Forgive me, guys. My throat is destroyed. So we go through this emotional moment where it's kind of like this fuzziness where we don't really have a thin line. And there's a thin line between rebutting a point and celebrating. But I don't think those who are rebutting the fact of whether or not Charlie Kirk's ideas were good or bad are necessarily celebrating. So all that I'm asking as we're having these conversations is that we engage in good faith. By the way, as you guys are coming on here, I do ask that you please hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. That would be great. King said, liberals can't have conversations. I think that's apparent. I'm having a conversation with you right now. I've seen it numerous times. And this painting of saying liberals can't have conversation, you're patently incorrect. To say the point that the liberals can't have conversation, then what is our society at this point? We have gotten so divided in our country, I don't give a shit who is right or wrong. The fact is that we have become divided. Now, where do we go from here? The moment we stop having conversations, we might as well jump into a civil war because that's exactly what's happening right now. We're seeing people being doxxed because they retweeted a quote from Charlie. We've seen where the left is now being mercilessly called out. And there's even some rhetoric we'll get into here in a minute. I just want to give kind of a pre-intro on this. So again, to my stance on what has been going on with the Charlie Kirk stuff is that cooler heads prevail. Those who can put the emotions, put them aside, and have grown adult conversations will be the ones who can have meaningful debates. Those who are acting out on emotions, whether it's right or left, are incorrect in this. We need to have a moment to be able to talk about this stuff. I mean, of the 8 last politically motivated attacks, 7 were Republicans and 1 was just looking for frame. And Tron, you are probably correct. You're absolutely probably correct. But I think, again, my friend Counterpoints, who has a stream, and I think he said it the best. Then what? Okay, the right does it the most. Then what? Okay, the left does it the most. Then what? That's something that we have to look at here. That's what your side wants. You celebrate that. See, and there it goes with King again, not understanding the conversation that we are having. I could talk about how the right has celebrated just as much as the left. We can play this game all night long. What purpose does it serve? It serves nothing. Nothing. It further divides this country, and that is something that I have actually been vehemently against. What happened to Charlie was absolutely wrong. And that's something that we all agree on. But instead of focusing on the unity, we're focused on the division and how we can further disagree with everybody. Who was right? Who was wrong? Was it justified? Was it not justified? These are not conversations we should be having in such an emotional and fragile state in our society. When emotions are high and we are already immensely divided, do you think this serves the greater good? I'm sorry. I got to put you in timeout for some of the language that you were using, King. So, anyways, let's move on with some of the stories that we have because I want to cover some of this. But I wanted to give you guys my perspective because you guys haven't heard from me since Wednesday. Well, Monday last week. We can have these conversations. I think motions are maybe starting to come down a little bit, but they're still pretty high. But engage intellectually. Engage intellectually honest and not dishonest. I like how they say we got to remove Trump, but if Trump goes, who shall we replace it with? Night Owl, that's a perfect example of where we'll see J.D. Vance taking the stage, right? J.D. Vance is not much better than Donald Trump. Denial, hatred, and dehumanizing Republicans will only get you so far. Most normal people are leaving your... Okay, and again, I'm not engaging with this tonight, y'all. Let me know when y'all can engage in honest, intellectually honest debates. In fact, you're talking with somebody, engage with my conversations. Engage with what I'm saying for a minute. Focus on this conversation right now. If you're going to come in here and just start espousing divisive rhetoric like that, you can go somewhere else. I don't care. Charlie Kirk and Israel is part of it. Netanyahu 1 day after his death in an article. Okay, that's crazy. But anyways, too much gain or something super scratchy, or am I crazy? Hold on. Let me try to switch this up for you here, Tron. Hold on. Okay, that should be good. This is actually directly plugged into my mic now, whereas before it was not directly plugged in. So I hope this sounds a little bit better. All right, let's get into the conversation now. And let's see. Have you not seen how terrified he was? Okay, I don't know. All right, let's go on with the stories. Let's get on to it. Let's move on to the stories because this is what we're here for. Stewie's vids. Jesus loves you. I hope you're having a blessed week. And if you don't mind me asking, are you a believer? If not, are you willing to give Christianity a try? You're going to come in here and start trying to espouse that. First of all, I am a Christian. I am a faithful follower of Jesus Christ. But I will tell you something. The way that I have been seeing it be used is a shame. It's a shame. Love thy neighbor is a good one. I think a lot of people need to hear right now. Do you see Trump's Charlie video used AI? Yeah, Tron, I saw that. I couldn't help but get by. You could see where he's got his hands kind of like this, and then they glitch real quick. It was really crazy. All right. So let's jump into this story. Stephen Miller. I'm not playing. I'm going heavy-handed now. One second. All right. So I've already talked about it, but I'm going to kind of give an intro as well for the video purposes. Last week, we saw a very tragic incident take place where a man by the name of Charlie Kirk was unfortunately taken from this earth. And that is wrong. Our society has become so divided that we now cannot see eye to eye. And those in power are taking full advantage of this tragedy, taking full advantage of it, not leaving anything to waste. We all know that there is a certain party that loves to never let a tragedy go to waste. We saw where, for example, all last year during the election, they talked about Laken Riley, and we have not heard a peep about it since. And now here it is with Charlie Kirk. Now they are trying to use him to further their political agendas. Let's look here no further than Stephen Miller. He said, and this is what they're doing, is they're trying to rally up the base, rile them up, capitalize on that frustration and that anger. Stephen Miller saying, you will live in exile. The power of law enforcement or President Trump's leadership will be used to find you, will be used to take away your money, take away your power, and if you've broken the law, take away your freedom. I'm going to give you a little spoiler alert. What Stephen Miller is talking about right now is specifically looking at going after NGOs and other various organizations, including up to Antifa. Looking to try to strip away those organizations. I would not be surprised if they even went after try to go after the No King's Day protest Donald Trump has even tried to espouse some of this mysterious rhetoric of the Soros campaign, right? This conspiracy theory that he's funding this, potentially jailing Soros under what? RICO charges? Pretty crazy stuff. And then we see where Donald Trump Jr. says anyone who says political violence is a problem on both sides and not just from those aligned with the Democratic Party should be thrown off air. But here's a tweet from Don Jr. on 8/6/19. The Democrats will stop at nothing to push their political agenda. The party of Antifa has gone full fascist. It's truly disgusting. This is, I don't know when this one was. Fascist Democrats like Cuomo are openly reverting their party's historic position in support of outright segregation. Here's one from a couple of years ago. We all know that rhinos are secretly happy about the indictment, but the fascists left. Now, remember, I was told that that word incites a certain conclusion. You guys can't see this. Hold on one second, guys. Okay. Why is it not popping up? There we go. That works. All right, let's get back to it. Then we saw, the problem with misinformation we have right now going around in our society is that you see, once you open that can of disinformation, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to seal it back and put it back in the can, so to speak. But what we see here is, for example, we saw where the Guardian was, you can see here, where is it? Had a retracted anonymous source that claimed to be friends of Tyler Robinson. Couldn't accurately remember the details of the friendship. They had to redact that because a friend of Tyler Robinson, the man who was accused of perpetrating this act, a friend said that he didn't know his political views started to lean more left. They had to retract that statement, but people will still run with it. And you can see some of the rhetoric that is going on out there on social media saying celebrating political violence is 100% uniquely left-wing. 100% uniquely left-wing. Time to look in the mirror. And this is referring to Hutch. Hutch said, sure would be embarrassing if there was a video of Trump joking about Paul Pelosi nearly being beaten to death as a room full of his supporters howl with laughter.
We'll stand up to crazy Nancy Pelosi who ruined San Francisco. How's her husband doing, by the way? Anybody know? And she's against building a wall in our...
There might have been a little bit of echo coming through. I didn't realize those were my speakers. Then you see Mike Johnson. People have got to stop framing simple policy disagreements in terms of existential threats to our democracy. You can't call the other side fascist and enemies of the state and not understand that there are some deranged people in our society who will take that as cues to act. And you can see here's Donald Trump.
American politics today is between these far-left fascists led by Harris and her group. We have a fascist person running who's incompetent. She's a Marxist, communist, fascist, socialist. She's not actually a socialist. She's gone past that. Somebody's got to explain this woman. There's a radical left Marxist, communist, fascist.
So again, we'll go back up and look at Mike Johnson's tweet there saying people have got to stop framing simple policy disagreements in terms of existential threats to our democracy. You can't call the other side fascist and enemies of the state and not understand that there are some deranged people. Again, refusing to hold their own party accountable. That is a concern. And then Glenn Beck. Stop calling Charlie Kirk a conservative activist. He was a civil rights leader. I told you guys that there would be a time for us to be able to discuss Charlie Kirk's views. And I think now would be a good time to discuss some of Charlie Kirk's views, namely that he opposed the Civil Rights Act. I had to look for the exact video. It's out there. You can find it. We can also look at this right here. Fetterman, who is on the Democratic side, I think has lost the plot. Fetterman did an interview saying, "Don't ever compare anyone to Hitler. We have to turn the temperatures down. We can't compare people to these kinds of figures. In history, Trump is not an autocrat." You know, there's rhinos and there's dinos for sure. And I think Fetterman probably fits under that. I would generally agree with his sentiment that, look, you can't compare anyone to that. But I've heard decent arguments about, you know, how should we, you know, if it's at your doorstep, it's already too late, right? So when are we allowed to? If not now, then when, right? If not now, then when? I'm not ascribing to this necessarily, but if not now, then when? So when it comes to the Charlie Kirk stuff, we're going to get into more stuff as we go through this. But again, we really need to assess what is going on here. I'm going to read chat. Hey guys, if you're doing me a favor, we're at 178 people watching. Hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. We want to get to 50 likes tonight. 50 likes. I mean, it's pretty simple. 50 people will get liked. Let's read the chat. We're not a democracy, you effing clown. Oh, well, that's why I'm glad I banned you. Okay. Charlie Kirk was an ultra right-wing weirdo. Yeah, and I think, see, here's the thing, right? And this is the problem is that now that we have had tempers calming down, maybe a little bit, maybe not a lot, but a little bit, we can engage intellectually honest here and say, look, two things can be true at the same time, right? Charlie Kirk was known to be pretty far right, all things considered, not as far right, and we'll get to that as well. So two things can be right. He didn't deserve what happened to him. At the same time, he could have, you know, ideas that I may not agree with. Again, it doesn't override the fact, as I've already told you guys before, of what happened. We're allowed to have disagreements. That's just how this happens. We should never, ever, 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 ever resort to what happened with Charlie Kirk. Do you get in the violent celebration for the left over Charlie Kirk? Yes, gun guy, I just came in here and did that. I did that very early on. You can go and look at it. Any of the rhetoric that is coming from the left or far left or whatever left it may be, celebrating this, and I want to be very, 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 very clear, celebrating and disagreeing are two totally different things. If they are, in fact, celebrating, then it's wrong. If there is violence from the left, I called out, for example, when we talk about BLM, I think it was a mostly peaceful protest. I think there were segments of the protest that were certainly taken advantage of by rioters and looters and things of that nature, and that should be called out. They should be arrested. They should be held to the fullest extent of the law. Hell, for that matter, protests that get out of hand. You lay a hand on an officer, you get charged. The far right calling for civil war. That's 110% incorrect. Behavioral pattern recognition and connecting dots is a soft science, but a science nonetheless. Yes, the left narrative is one of the delusional lunacy. Grow up, not everything is subjective. I don't think I said, wait. Behavioral patterns recognition and connecting dots is soft science, but a science nonetheless. Yes, the left narrative is one of delusion and lunacy. Grow up, not everything is subjective. No, that's a subjective opinion, which you just gave. Ironic, to say the least. He wasn't anywhere near far right. If being on the right these days means being rational and having sane views, that's what makes the... Listen, I'm not about to pull up 100 of these clips that I have seen from Charlie Kirk. There are certain positions that he has taken that are certainly far right. Now, is it as far right as, say, you know, the America First movement? No, I don't think it's that far right. Yep, Tammy's exactly right. Don't forget about Jan 6. You talk about delusional. That's pretty crazy as well. Debating is not a crime. Debating is not a crime. You're correct. Words are words. Now, I want to be very clear because I've heard this narrative going around. I've heard the narrative that words are not violent. Now, that is technically correct. I mean, here in the United States, we don't have hate speech laws. But I feel like that's a lot of hand waving, right? Because at what point do we say, yeah, your words have impact? Words may not inherently in and of themselves be violent, but at what point do your words have impact, influence? We can look back in history where people have never, ever, fired one bullet, and they've had numerous conversations that have been abhorrent. Now, again, I always have, and the problem is with these conversations and they're being so fresh, I have to preface this. None of that justifies what happened to Charlie. I don't think we were anywhere near that with Charlie. I don't think it was justified in any shape, form, or fashion. But strictly to that point of whether or not words have meaning and words have impact and can change minds and certainly lead us down that road, it certainly can happen. I mean, technically speaking, we see where Charlie Kirk was an influential figure. Literally. We see where they are, the stadiums are putting up in memoriam, right? We're seeing the impact that Charlie Kirk has had across the country. So necessarily his words had some form or another of an impact. So just keep that in mind as well. Trying to change the narrative. We wrong. I don't know what you're trying to say, Crawdad. Did you even know Charlie Kirk before he was? I bet there's not a single video on your channel about him. I actually did cover, I think, a few topics of him. I did not watch Charlie Kirk religiously. No. Again, you can go back and look. I think there's maybe a couple of times that I talked about Charlie Kirk. I knew who he was. I saw him on Jubilee and things of that nature, but I did not religiously watch him. So, but great point, Capo. Jesus loves you all. Yes, Jesus loves everybody, right? There were Antifa militants within. Oh, now we're going that route. Okay. Now we're really going to the crazy rabbit hole. Yo, thank you for that subscription. Hey, do me a favor, guys. We got 178 of you guys in here. Hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. That would mean the world to me. We're already at 24 likes. Let's get to 50 likes, all right? All right, let's get into the next topic here. Let's talk about immigration for a little bit. Okay? So, I don't remember when I covered this, if I covered it at all. Long story short, ICE raided a Hyundai plant, however you call it, and ended up arresting South Korean migrants who allegedly were here on worker visas. Detained them and sent them on their way. And a deported South Korean factory worker said, nobody's going to stay and work when it's like this. We've already seen, by the way, where big influential figures, I think it was Bad Bunny was his name or something like that. He's a big Latin singer. He said he doesn't want to have any concerts here in the U.S. for fear of deportations. You see, there's a chilling effect that happens when you're too strong on a particular policy. In this case, deportations. When you're ultra strong on this policy, you might get the results you want, but you're going to get results that you do not desire as well. We have the FIFA World Cup coming to the United States. I don't remember when. I think it's next year. Do you think people are going to attend all that when they're worried that they're here on a tourist visa and it might get revoked? Mind you, they're stacking the reasons for which you can get revoked now, including First Amendment rights. You say anything negative while you're here in the United States on a tourist visa, yank, gone, done. We also saw Kristi Noem saying the last thing, and I want to cover this because this is something that has really gotten crazy. Kristi Noem saying the last thing Charlie had texted me about a day or two before he passed away was about those mayors and governors. He wanted them to be held accountable for how dangerous they were making the situation for the people that had to live in those cities. I don't know if I have it up here. No, I don't. What we're seeing, and I said this earlier in my introduction, is that the Republicans are using this tragedy for their own political gain. Do I believe that Charlie Kirk had a conversation with Kristi Noem on a convenient political talk like that? No, I don't, quite frankly. And we'll see more where people are capitalizing on this tragedy. I think it's wrong to capitalize on this tragedy. I think it's wrong to capitalize, quite frankly, on any tragedy. I'm not going to go into details, but I've had personal things happen in my life where I've seen people do that, and I'm against it. I've seen people on the left do it. I'm against it. You see, it's a funny thing when you're principled. When you're a principled person, you don't have to worry about being inconsistent. When it's wrong, and it's it. But that's not how it works with everybody in our country. I'm willing to recognize that. But I want to be specific to this. To this point, this is wrong. We also saw where Trump announced that we're coming in regards to federal police and military going into Chicago and LA. The only reason crime is somewhat down in Memphis is because the FBI and others in the federal government at my direction have been working there for 5 months. What? On the absolutely terrible crime numbers. Likewise in Chicago and Los Angeles, but the real work by us has barely begun. That happens after we make the official announcement that we're coming. And when we do that, as we did in now very safe Washington, D.C., the no crime miracle begins. Only I can save them. I want you guys to listen to this rhetoric. Only I can save them. Nobody else but Donald Trump. Let that soak in. Not the police officers, not the military members, hell, not even the department heads. Only Donald Trump can save those cities. And we're also seeing my prediction be 100% true. You can go back and look at this. I made this prediction and it's 100% correct. This crackdown on DC and what we'll get to eventually Memphis, Chicago, and LA has everything to do with immigration and almost zero to do with crime. You can see here Trump saying DC is no longer going to cooperate with ICE, threatens to declare a national emergency and federalize the districts. Again, Trump is threatening to declare an emergency to hold on to power. Why would he declare that? Because otherwise he has to get approval from Congress. There was a funny thing I remember Donald Trump saying. Donald Trump said, I'm the president. I can do what I want. That's pretty crazy to me. Pretty crazy. We also saw this crazy interaction take place on Fox. Brian Kilmeade suggests involuntary lethal injection for mentally ill homeless. Let's take a listen to what he said.
They have given billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get to this point?
Right.
Crazy. Remember, tone down the rhetoric, guys. This took place, by the way, September 13th. Tone down the rhetoric. And here's his apology, which is more like a, hey, I got in trouble by my boss and I have to apologize. But listen to this. You'll see the tone.
And it actually happened when we were together on Wednesday, Lawrence. In the morning, we were discussing the murder of Irina Zaruska in Charlotte, North Carolina, and how to stop these kinds of attacks by homeless, mentally ill assailants, including institutionalizing or jailing such people so they cannot attack again. Now, during that discussion, I wrongly said they should get lethal injections. I apologize for that extremely callous remark. I'm obviously aware that not all mentally ill homeless people act as the perpetrator did in North Carolina, and that so many homeless people deserve our empathy and compassion. Lawrence, back to you.
Never really condemned it. See, notice how he said, I'm aware that not all mentally ill. Got it. So you apologized, but you didn't really apologize. You're like, I still hold that sentiment. We then saw Senator Mark Kelly slamming Donald Trump for adding fuel to the fire of political divisions in America. I agree. This is the kind of leadership that we need. We need somebody to call out this divisive rhetoric. I'm going to read some chat real quick. This kind of the rhythm of this is going to be a little weird, admittedly. Let's go ahead. Continue on here. Goodbye. You can go somewhere else. I'm not playing these games today. Empathy, something Kirk didn't believe in. Yeah, there's that too, Tammy. What's going on, Tammy? Hey, guys, do me a favor. Hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. We're at 30 likes. Let's get to 50. We're almost there. Neighbor of Tyler Robinson confirms he was... Okay, so Google sucks. First of all, that story, I think here's the problem I have with this. What purpose does that serve? Adding that detail that he was, what his sexual preferences were. What value does that add to the conversation? Nothing. All it seeks is to look to blame. And this is the problem I have with our society right now, is every time we have a tragedy, we're always so quick to go, oh, who's it? Oh, it's a righty. Oh, it's a lefty. And then the funny thing is we never come to an agreement on what it is. And then we sit there, don't come up with a solution. And then when we revisit that conversation, we already have our own talking points and we've never resolved that difference. And that's pretty crazy. So anyways, that's pretty crazy to me to see that. I don't know why my chat is not working on my thing. Hold on one second. Let me pop out my chat over here. It's a little bit easier to read over here. It's divide and conquer. Yeah, Moonshine. What's going on, Moonshine? The killer's motive was probably based on his lifestyle in addition to his mental health and access to guns. So here's the thing. First of all, the mental health crisis in our country is a problem. I think we've also seen a lot of people who are terminally online. Okay. And again, someone being transgender is not a right or left thing. Someone being LGBTQ is not a right or left thing. In fact, I think I remember Donald Trump championing all the LGBTQ support he was getting. So it's not a right or left thing. All these troll trashing Charlie Kirk to not listen to his podcast and proving wrong debates. Otherwise, you'd not be spreading such vitriolic lies. I don't know what you're talking about, J-Lam. I don't know if you're talking about me or what you're talking about. Biden suffered from mental health. So is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is massively suffering from some kind of cognitive decline. He's consistently forgetting where he's at. There is a problem for lonely young men. Yeah, 100%, Tammy. That's exactly it, right? Is that it preys upon. There are certain people that prey upon the youth in the way that they, try to help give them a home. There are plenty of trans people on the right. The difference is they just live their life. It sounds like to me, they were just, the person who is involved in this, at least the transgender individual, if that is the case, which we still don't know for a fact, by the way, we still don't know to what extent they played a role in this. For all intents and purposes, that individual in and of themselves, so far, seems to not have been implicated in this. You guys won't be winning an election for at least another 20 years? Okay, we'll get to that. All right, let's talk about Kari Lake. By all accounts, those parents did a good job raising him, talking about the suspect, until he was sent off to be brainwashed. We have lived through the most horrific brainwashing campaign in the history of mankind. There was a quote that Donald Trump made over the weekend where he said, "Smart people don't like me," which means not smart people, the uneducated, love them. This is a sentiment that Kari Lake herself has just reiterated here. The reason why Donald Trump does not like smart people and smart people don't like him is because they expose him for his faulty lies. When you surround yourself with a bunch of uneducated people, and when you surround yourself with yes men, you're the king. You're the all-knower. Only you can save Los Angeles, right? Same thing here we're seeing from Kari Lake. This demonization of college campuses is wild to me to see. I'll tell you, as somebody who was in college during the exceptionally woke era, I did not encounter any of that. Do I think there are classes out there, and do I think there are certain organizations? Sure, I'm sure they exist. But this is a way to, again, further conquer and divide. So, again, it's amazing to me to watch this unfold. Hold on one second here. 1 second. Someone said, buddy, you weren't in college during the woke era, you're 40. It's funny to me. I got my bachelor's degree recently. Put it that way. All right. So again, I'm not 40, by the way. Appreciate the compliment that I look mature for my age. I am not 40. I'll put it that way. I love how you request the chat to be respectful as you spread lies, misquotes. All right, you can go somewhere else, and I don't care. I don't have time for y'all on this. All right, let's go to the next one. Delusional people don't realize that God grants you that gift for not loving you. Look 45, bro. No, I'm not 45. I'm younger than that. But appreciate the compliment. All right, so Trump said they're already under investigation. A lot of people on the left are already under investigation. Again, openly admitting to weaponizing the DOJ. So again, what we're seeing is Donald Trump weaponizing the DOJ, doing everything in his power to try and use that power. That's why he put in place like his personal attorneys like Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche. We're also seeing Donald Trump put this out, again, talking about the word fascist, which I probably should have placed this in a little bit earlier, saying Governor Kathy Hochul of New York has endorsed the little communist Zohran Mamdani running for mayor of New York. This is a rather shocking development. So again, it's okay apparently to call someone a communist, but it's not okay to call somebody a fascist. And you see Brian Kilmeade talking to Kash Patel saying you posted that we got him and that ended up not being true. For reference on this, by the way, Kash Patel said, hey guys, we got our suspect in custody. An hour later saying, sorry guys, we don't have him in custody. And then all of a sudden they have him in custody. So it was a back and forth on that. So the next thing we have here is explaining why it's important to have competence. When you don't have competence in an administration, you run into problems like this. All right. So what we see here is that this person lays it out extremely perfect. And I want to walk through this. It's a little bit lengthy, but bear with me. Yeah, Tammy, farmers are losing their farms. In fact, soybean crops, I think I'm going to get to that. Soybean farmers are not going to have anything to give to China, which is our biggest buyer of soybeans. So again, here we go here. Kash Patel, this is from Adam Cochran on X. Yesterday, I highlighted how Kash Patel's poor handling of the case could put it in jeopardy. But today, the FBI's lead podcaster doubled down on stupid in a public interview that is a defense attorney's dream. Let's break down the incompetence. An important piece of context to keep in mind is they desperately want to make this a federal charge crime so they can keep it untelevised, control the narrative, and seek the death penalty with a jury base that isn't 90% Mormon. Right off the bat, the host says Kirk isn't just an impactful person. He was your friend. Kash nods in silence. Immediately, defense is going to frame this as a personal matter. They'll seek a motion to suppress, attempting to exclude evidence that is from the FBI instead of local law enforcement, arguing it's tainted by personal relationships. We've heard numerous government officials, by the way, come out and say they've had very personal relationships with Charlie Kirk. They'll also make this a voir dire focus, asking jurors if they have this, if they saw this bias, and may even pursue a motion for gag order, preventing the FBI from being allowed to make other public comments. Although I imagine they want him to continue to screw up. More importantly, defense will want to keep this as local charges, where Robinson has much better odds of avoiding the death penalty. Since Utah has already charged, this can only move to federal charges if the state steps out of the way. Defense will argue on this and many other matters. Why should Utah cede sovereignty to a federal agency that admits it's personally tied to the victim, making it deeply politically unpopular for Utah to let it federalize? Kash then begins to talk about how he personally walked the crime scene, and at the time they found evidence, including a screwdriver, on the roof. The problem is that it was around 5 to 6 p.m. on the 11th, way after the crime scene should have been processed. Excuse me. Defense will argue that the director is an administrator and not a crime scene technician. This will raise questions about chain of custody and how an obvious item lay in the open for more than 24 hours. But it will also come back to pretrial prejudice. The reason the evidence isn't disclosed on national TV before a trial is some evidence may not be admissible. And defense will certainly use this in a motion to suppress evidence, arguing the chain of custody issues. So again, what we've seen from Kash Patel is that he's been going out doing all these press conferences without any real evidence, so to speak, of backing it up, which puts it at a problem. Hold on one second. All right. So we go on here. Patel then said he walked in the wooded area where the gun was allegedly disposed of, and he knew from his investigative experience what decisions he needed to make. And saying he has support of Trump is even worse. Defense will attempt to say this is a grounds of a motion to suppress the evidence related to the firearm as it was overseen by a political figure. But they also use it as a motion to compel. Where is it? I lost my train here. Oh, discovery of involvement of the White House in investigative decisions. So again, the problem with this is now what decisions did the White House have in making these determinations? Then Patel makes the dumbest possible mistakes. He says, I can report today that the DNA hits on the towel that the gun was wrapped in and the screwdriver are positively processed for the suspect in custody. Congrats, Kash. You just tainted that evidence. Now defense can argue you poisoned the jury pool by giving an affirmed inaccurate statement about scientific evidence without hearing expert testimony. DNA evidence isn't binary, it's probabilistic. 2, they'll also argue contamination as you were involved in both evidence locations 24 hours later. And DNA evidence is supposed to only be presented by experts. So I'm not going to read this whole thing because it's lengthy. But the point of what this is when you have incompetent people in charge, then what you see is you see a total problem with this. You see where he just drops the ball massively. And the next thing we see is Venezuela. Let's talk about Venezuela for a minute. Actually, we chat for a second here. Anybody ever see a lawyer tell the client or interested parties not to talk about the case? Julian, exactly. That's the thing. Prosecutors shouldn't talk about the case unless they have gotten and even then they probably shouldn't talk about it. They can talk about very broad generalities, right? Maybe the name of suspect, things of that nature. But going through there and trying to say these things is just not going to work. Let's see. What's the next thing? Let's see. Trump is DEI. Only people dumb enough to follow him can be hired. Tron. All these people from social media grifting and we're on faux simping. Yeah, and I think that's the thing too, Jocelyn, right? Is that when we look at talking about whether or not this administration is full of propaganda, we can look at who's in this administration. For crying out loud, we have Janine Pirro as the DA for Washington, D.C. It's crazy. So again, it's pretty crazy to me to see this. So. All right, let's continue on here. Let's see. So a reporter asked, do you think you will start with strikes on mainland Venezuela? And he said, well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And then all of a sudden he was asked, this was all, I believe yesterday, a reporter asked, is getting rid of Maduro an option, regime change? He said, it's not an option or not option. We'll see. We had an election that was wrong. It was almost corrupt as our election in 2020. Again, essentially saying he wants regime change, which, by the way, this administration has already put a $15 million bounty on Maduro. Let me go ahead and skip through this a little bit. Almost there. Here we go. So then the president of Venezuela called the strike on the boat illegal. He said, what's illegal is the fact that 300 million people died last year from drugs. Look at this little reader's note down here. 62 million people died in the world in 2024. This makes it impossible for 300 million people to have died of one single cause. So again, pretty crazy stuff to think about. We also saw, and this is the problem that I think a lot of people don't realize is during these tragedies, we tend to forget that their world does not stop spinning. The world doesn't stop spinning. In fact, it continues to go and move and ebb and flow. We saw where Russia invaded Poland via drones. And now Romania becomes the second NATO country to detect Russian drones in their airspace. That's 2 NATO countries that have had their sovereignty invaded by Russia. Important note here, BRICS met. There was a BRICS summit, I believe a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, where they talked about this. No, not talked about this, but where they met. And I wonder what happened during that, because it's convenient that after they meet with the BRICS summit, Putin decides to get a little bit crazy with it. And I think it's because he knows that our leadership is incredibly weak. I think he knows that. And then what you see is that the UK has announced that it will be joining NATO's Operation Eastern Sentry in Poland following last week's reckless and dangerous drone incursion by Russia into Poland. Several Eurofighter Typhoons with the British Royal Air Force were deployed to Poland to join the multinational force, so far consisting of fighter aircraft from Denmark, France, and Germany, now defending the airspace over Poland on NATO's Eastern Front. Guys, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but we are the closest we have been to, at the very least, a global conflict. At the very least, a global conflict, one in which we could potentially be sitting on the shoulders of potentially World War III. We also saw where Chinese buyers have booked a total. This is, again, the world doesn't stop because of a tragedy here in the United States. It continues to go on. Chinese buyers have booked a total of 0 U.S. soybean cargoes for the new crop year. By this time last year, Chinese buyers had booked around 13 million tons of U.S. soybeans. Remember when Donald Trump said that he was going to help farmers out? I remember he sat down with all the farmers and talked about how it was going to be great, the golden age. Golden age. Not really working out. CNN reported coffee prices in the U.S. jumped nearly 21% in August compared to last year. The biggest annual increase in almost 30 years. On a monthly basis, prices rose 4%, the sharpest climb in 14 years. You like that nice cup of Joe from Starbucks? Well, got some bad news for you. It's going to get a lot more expensive. And if you want to make it at home, it's not going to be any cheaper because guess what? It's a commodity. It's going to go up across the board. I'm guessing you're not very smart, but judging by your audience level, I'm guessing you're also not very popular. Okay, well, goodbye then. You can go somewhere else. Bye. All right, so then we go to the next one. Trump said companies should no longer be forced to report on a quarterly basis. Basically, I think this has to do with the SEC and the SEC requiring that they do quarterly reports. You can see here, talking about this, subject to SEC approval, companies and corporations should no longer be forced to report on a quarterly basis, but rather report on a 6-month basis. This will save money and allow managers to focus on properly running their companies. Did you ever hear the statement that China has a 50 to 100 year view on management of a company, whereas we run companies on a quarterly basis? Okay. What Donald Trump is trying to do here is play with the books. He's trying to cook the books. Okay. He knows that what's going to happen is that on these quarterly reports, there's going to be losses. So Donald Trump wants to try to alleviate that. I've never heard a president, I see no good reason to do 6 months. That seems absurd. We're already seeing where he's potentially going to cook the books at the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is going to just completely crumble our reputation on the world stage. He's removing Fed governors left and right. Now he's trying to get in here and change how companies report their earnings. It's insane. And apparently small U.S. importers are eating 20% interest rates to cover tariff costs, basically taking on loans to pay for these tariffs. So I'm going to reach out a little bit. Let's see. Really agree with Charlie on a lot of things, but I respected him. I love him for what he did and everything he preached about. A lot of people miss his point. I'd say it's sad. So many people think it with conviction and can't look at things objectively and just be an observer and not think critically. The problem is right now, Bryce, is that the right is not thinking critically. They're thinking very emotionally. I am one who is thinking critically on this. And I don't agree with a lot of Charlie Kirk's views. From everything I've seen about him, I don't agree with it. But again, the problem is when we engage in these conversations, my disagreement turns to somehow celebration. It's not a celebration. It's rebutting a point. Here's point A. Here's my rebuttal to point A. Where we have agreement and where we have a foundation is that we agree that it should not have happened to Charlie Kirk. It's plain as simple as that. So, anyways, I like the Civil Rights Act, unlike Charlie. Yeah, Joseph Lee, right? Exactly, right? I have no one to watch because who does this reporting? Okay. All right, let's go to the next one here. So, remember when I talked about capitalizing on a tragedy? I put out a video, so you might have already seen this if you haven't already. By the way, guys, hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. I think we're up to 39 likes. Let's get to 50. We just need 10 more people to hit that like button. We'll get to 50. So, guys, here's the thing. The reality is that JD Vance is trying to prepare for a 2028 run. They are trying to help this man do anything that they possibly can to prop him up for 2028. They're also trying to put JD at the forefront to help Republicans in the midterms. And so what perfect opportunity then, guess what? Go on to Charlie Kirk's show. Now, I didn't watch the entirety. I watched bits of it here and there. And it just reeks of ethics violations all over the place. But we'll get through some of this. So JD Vance says, of course, we have to talk about this incredibly destructive movement of left-wing extremism that has grown up over the last few years, and I believe is part of the reason why Charlie was unalived. We're going to talk about how to dismantle that and how to bring real unity. I don't know if saying and blaming a particular side is a way of bringing unity. I don't think that's how it works. JD Vance then goes on to say people on the left are much likelier to defend and celebrate political violence. Again, he wants to talk about unity. Don't really seem like he's all about unity. This is not a both sides problem. If both sides have a problem, then one side has a much bigger and malignant problem, and that is the truth. Again, he just talked about unity, and that's completely out the window. And this is the crazy thing. This is probably one of the most wild quotes that I had seen throughout this entire presser. When you see someone celebrating Charlie's murder, call them out, and hell, call their employer. The vice president calling for doxing. I've never seen this before. I've never seen this before. This is crazy. So we'll go on to the next one here. JD Vance saying Charlie Kirk never said black women do not have the brain power. So here's a clip of this. This is a good point. JD Vance said Charlie Kirk never said black women do not have the brain processing power to be taken seriously. He never uttered those words. Yo, thank you for that sub, Judgment Free Zone. Appreciate the subscription. Oh, you subscribed on Twitch. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that subscription. I can't see. There you are. There you are, Judgment Free Zone. I was trying to find you. Because I got these going on. Okay. But here's Charlie Kirk saying, Joy Reid, Michelle Obama, Ketanji Brown Jackson, you do not have the brain processing power to be taken seriously. Let's listen to the exact quote.
The writer has been called the Ketanji Brown shallow words. If we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously.
And again, going back, J.D. Vance saying Charlie Kirk never said black women do not have the brain processing power to be taken seriously. Patently incorrect. But this is the craziest thing about this. And this goes to my thumbnail. Donald Trump being corrupt. There's also several other. Spartacus, you have my full endorsement to ban anybody that is being divisive. I have no problem with it. More specifically, the right-wing trolls, I've lost patience with it. Go ahead and you can ban them. I don't care. But anyways, so he wasn't saying all black women. He was saying affirmative action hires. Let's go back to this quote. J.D. Vance saying Charlie Kirk never said black women do not have the brain processing power to be taken seriously. Who is Michelle Obama and Ketanji Brown Jackson? And if they were DEI hires, then what was that? Again, I'm not going to parse through here and do all this stuff. Yep, I don't mind doing that. All right. I'll show you just how much silencing opposing views are. I don't care. Y'all are literally, the right wing right now is the one going out there and doxing people. I don't want to hear a thing about censorship. It's ironic coming from the right now. It's disgusting to see from the right, actually. But again, the Republican strategy right now is never let a tragedy go to waste. Eric Trump used Charlie Kirk's death as a marketing for his book. Basically, and I don't want to play this entire clip. It's 2 minutes long. But essentially what happens is he goes on there and he talks about how the exact same thing that's happening to Charlie Kirk is in my book, actually. And if I had written this after Charlie Kirk's incident, I would have included Charlie's chapter in there as well. Openly admitting to capitalizing on a tragedy. So again, it's crazy to me to watch this unfold. All right. And here's the book right here. Again, Donald Trump promoting this book from his son and also going on Truth Social to promote this book. I'm pretty certain this is an ethics violation, but in the day and age of corruption, this is just normal. This is just another day. But we all know if Joe Biden did something like this, or if Obama did anything like this, or Adam Schiff did anything like this, they'd be calling for some kind of an impeachment immediately. And we'll watch this proclamation with the little time we have left.
Hello.
All right. So far, didn't that website get taken down? Yes, so far it's been taken down, but it doesn't mean that it will stay up. And it doesn't mean that people don't have databases running around everywhere. The Bible is true. I would agree. I like the Bible. I believe you should treat others as you'd like to be treated. Exactly, Tammy. Is that ungodly? Yeah, no, it's not ungodly. I think this is kind of the thing too, right? Is that the right will consistently talk about, I love Jesus and Jesus Christ is king, but then they are so incredibly divisive. If you don't think like them, talk like them, walk like them, they shun you. Remember that idea, by the way? There's that famous hypothetical they propose. They say, oh, if your neighbor busts down or if the neighbor comes into your house, what would you do? And my response is always the same. Well, I would know my neighbors, and my neighbors are pretty friendly. I'd say, hey, come on in. Let's have a chat. And if they turn violent, then, well, call the cops, kick them out the house. I see humanity as a pretty good thing. I think if we look at what happened with Jesus' day, Jesus took in all the outcasts. But that's not exactly what's going on right now with this crazy right wing that we've got going on. Let's see. I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. That's totally fair, Tammy. Did y'all know that even Shakespeare was commissioned to rewrite the Bible? Tessa said, have you heard of context? I have heard of context, which the right does not understand about a thing about. Do unto others as you would have done unto them is direction from the Lord. Yeah. Okay. Let's continue here.
Everybody, nice to have you here. We have some big things to announce. Today, at the request of Governor Bill Lee of Tennessee, who's standing with us, as you know, I'm signing a presidential memorandum to establish the Memphis Safe Task Force, and it's very important because of the crime that's going on, not only in Memphis, in many cities, and we're going to take care of all of them, step by step, just like we did in D.C. We have virtually no crime in D.C. right now, and we're going to keep it that way. It's our nation's capital.
Yeah, so what happened here is Donald Trump made a proclamation to establish a task force to send in the National Guard to Memphis, Tennessee. You see, he got pushback from Chicago's Pritzker, and we all knew this was coming. I called this out. You can go look at my videos. He wants to show a strength. He wants to flex his muscles. So what is he doing? He's trying to now go to Republican states because he knows he'll get acceptance from those Republican governors to then enforce his policy. So it's pretty crazy. Zoivod said, didn't the mayor and governor ask for it? I don't know about the mayor. I believe the mayor has been opposed to it. I have to look at that again. But the governor did ask for it. But it still doesn't change the fact that I think it's wrong. I think it adds to a layer. Certainly, if the governor's like, hey, I don't want them in there, and he sends them in there, yeah, that's wrong. And again, let's not pretend like, well, Trump didn't send them into Chicago. First of all, he hasn't sent them into Chicago yet. But he certainly did it in Los Angeles against the Governor Abbott's wishes. So, or not Abbott, Newsom's.
Capital. We're going to keep it that way, or we're going to federalize it if we had to, but we don't have to anymore because it's in such great shape. This task force will be a replica of our extraordinarily successful efforts here. And you'll see it's a lot of the same thing, although the numbers here are really something. They're really bad. Now, we did send FBI in about 4 months ago to work, and it brought some of the numbers down, and they did a great job, but we're sending in the big force now. We also sent them into Chicago on a sort of a moderate basis, and we brought down crime a little bit in Chicago, but we're now going to bring it down very big. We're going to be doing Chicago probably next.
Chicago probably next. I remember a time when Republicans were not big on big daddy government, and now they love big daddy government. They love it. They love it. They love when they trample all over their rights. It's pretty crazy.
I was with a great businessman, a man who is involved in all cities through his business. And I say, who do you...
Zeke. Vince, just an observation. Side note, you have a beautiful voice. Thank you so much. That is probably one of the kindest compliments that I have received in quite a while. Little self-gloating here. When I was in high school, I actually tried to do acting. And I know I'm gonna get a lot of trolls in here. I tried to do some acting. I got into it. I had a few small indie films and stuff that no one will ever have heard of, only unless you have the link for it. But I tried doing that. It's one of the reasons why I actually enjoy doing this here, because it does kind of fill that role. It fills that void in my heart, I guess, if you will. But I appreciate the compliment, Zeke. Thank you so much. I really mean that. That's actually really kind.
I think should be next after Memphis. And he said, sir, you've got to save Chicago. We're going to wait a little while. But he said, you got to save Chicago. You can't let it go. And this is a very prominent man that everybody knows.
So are you saying, oh, here, let me crank this up a little bit here, and that'll help make it a little bit louder than here we go. I'll turn that up a little bit.
In this room, another man in Memphis was saying, Bill, he was saying, very interesting, he's on the board of FedEx, and his hotel is about a block away. And he said, when I walked there, I said, I don't want to do this again. I never want to do it again. And they won't let me walk there. They take it.
Yeah, Tammy, you're 100% correct. Remember, God said don't follow false prophets. This is very true. That's one of the reasons why I sit there and say, false prophets as well is Trump saying only I could save him, and so it's crazy. I can't stand all the Kirk haters because of my name. They start right away talking BS. I think Donald Trump is overreaching. 100%, Bobby. I think we're already seeing this, by the way, in Los Angeles, where they're already saying that his attempt to do law enforcement activities in Los Angeles is illegal with the National Guard. Imagine that, an actor who's a woke liberal douchebag. Good job, you're stereotypical. Okay, well, Let's see here. You should go audition for commercials. Appreciate it, Zeke. How will you know a true prophet from? Okay. Interesting. All right, let's go on.
In armored vehicles. They take the board members of FedEx in armored vehicles like a
I'm going to kind of skip through this. There's some questions that they ask in the end. I wanted you to listen to some of these.
was intended to do, but I think the FBI's done a very good job. Should be put in, we're in cars of since that's happened. We went for Kirk. Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you,
Do you have
sir.
any? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President.
No, thank you very much. Great job. Any questions, please? Yeah, Brian.
First of all, you've got to.
Did they take that?
By the way, this guy here is Marjorie Taylor Greene's, I believe, boyfriend.
Down the blue tent?
Yes, sir, they did. Thank you very much. I appreciate
Last time
that.
he hit me with a blue tent and nobody knew what he was talking about. We found out, right?
Found out,
And
right.
he was gone the next day and they had a lot of, that was not so easy. They had, that's a violent, radical left group. Okay, go ahead.
I've heard a lot of comments for doing that. They still have their First Amendment right, though. They're still
Yeah, well, I'm not.
You've got an amazing team behind you. You've done an awesome job for DC.
Thank
I
you.
want to get ahead of a story that I think might come out. You pushed out an email earlier today, really showing dozens and dozens of local media in Memphis highlighting all of the violent crime in that city. So they have no problem reporting the crime, but when you show up to solve it, they're going to run around town looking for that one person that says, we don't want Donald Trump in our city. What can you say to the media there in Memphis, Tennessee, to help let them know the people?
What Brian's asking for, or what this guy's asking for, okay? He's asking, what this guy's asking for is to provide essentially talking points to the media. You know, we're so close to this point where we're almost to the extent of having government run media. It's insane. Guys, listen, it is, I know we never finish these videos, but that's okay. I'm getting late. My voice is like destroyed, guys. I had a cold starting this up. Okay. So that's what's going on. But guys, listen, we reached 50 by 9:00. Let me just tell you guys, I stream Wednesdays and Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. These past 2 weeks have been absolutely insane. So I made up, last week I did a Monday. This week I did a Monday. Next week, we will get back to scheduled programming. Wednesdays and Fridays, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I have a family emergency that popped up. That means that I cannot be here to do the stream on Wednesday and Friday this week. So follow me. I will do TikToks. I will do YouTube shorts. The content will still flow. Okay. But streams are going to be really difficult for the remainder of this week. So next week will be the next live stream, Wednesday and Friday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Please hit that like, subscribe, notification bell if you have not already. Thank you, Judgment Free Zone. I hope you feel better from the lingering cold. Thank you for the stream. Not a problem, Judgment Free Zone. And thank you all for supporting me. We're very close to hitting our first payout from YouTube, and that means the world to me. I promise you it's going to go right back into the stream. I'm not sure how we're going to spend the first $100 paycheck from YouTube when it comes out, but we will work on trying to figure out a solution for that when that happens. But thank you all for your support. Thank you all for your tuning in. And anyways, not a problem, Bobby. Not a problem. Appreciate you coming in. I appreciate that support and love. All right. All right, guys. Y'all take care. Have a great night. I will see you guys next Wednesday and Friday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, guys. Take care, y'all.